coronavirus crisis, they don't care.
They don't care. They think it is absolutely absurd, ridiculous, and I find myself coming around to their point of view on this. And the reason they've done it, and this is the important thing, it's just really important, is that within the House of Commons, there is no opposition to this stuff. But on Teeside, which was this massive thing in the Red Wall, when the last election came along, the Conservatives wiped out Teeside, and elected in their place were Conservatives, but also independents. And that's the thing. Teeside is governed by independents who are not beholden to the political views of the Labour Party or the Conservatives. And they think it's all, if I can put it like this, as it was put to me by the Deputy Mayor of Middlesbrough earlier, utter bollocks.
Well, that one go. I mean, I think that the people of Middlesbrough, the people of Teeside, strike me as the kind of independent thinkers that we need more of around the country, because as you're talking about Parliament seemed to have swallowed the narrative. Most of the media seem to have swallowed the narrative that we are in the grips of a bubonic plague-like medical menace that is going to wipe out, as Matt Hancock put it, hundreds of thousands of us. When, if you look at the statistics and the progress of this virus, it just doesn't stack up. It's something we have to be concerned about. I agree with you. At the beginning, we didn't know what we were dealing with. 1,000 people a day were dying. The lockdown was the only course of action. Surely now the course of action should be come out of all these measures, all these local lockdowns, protect the vulnerable, allow people to be sensible, and get the damn country back on its feet.
I think that's exactly it, Kevin, mate. And more than that, I would say to remove the government from the equation a little bit, so that we behave as individuals, and we are franchised with the right to behave sensibly. Because at the moment we're not. We're told to do this, we're told to do that. We're told one day we can go out, the next day we must stay in. It's an absurdity. What we need to be told is, look, you understand the risks. You understand the nature of COVID. If you are 70 years old, or in my case, 60 years old, maybe be a bit careful about things. If you're younger than that, go and live your lives. Because at the moment, it's an absurdity. It has become more than absurd. And I think we will look back on this, much as you've been saying, Kevin, mate, with horror in the years to come.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, with retrospect, it will be seen as globally one of the great catastrophic mistake of all time. That we've never, as a race, the human race has never done this before. We've never globally decided to shut everything down to fight a virus. It's never happened. It clearly doesn't work, and yet we seem to be locked on course. Nothing will stop our government in particular from ever worse, more draconian diktats and decrees. And Andy Preston, I think, is speaking for millions. I think what he feels is what I feel, and I am glad you're coming round to our way of thinking, that we are in the grip of a kind of we're in a grip of a kind of madness.
I think we are in a grip of a kind of madness. And I think Andy Preston and a mate of mine who's the deputy mayor up there, Anthony High, have got it right. And they're able to get it right because they're independent. And they're not dependent, therefore, upon the political parties as to what they say, what they do, and what policies they advance. Sorry, that's not COVID, by the way.
Yeah. Well, look out. COVID alert. Smoking, which, of course, as we've discussed before, save you from getting coronavirus. So very good health measure there, Rod, keeping the cigarettes going.
But it's really important to know that we must always have an opposition in the House of Commons. Never mind if you're right, disagree about COVID. There must always be someone to put the opposing point of view And at the moment, and for 8 months, there has been no one to put the opposing point of view. It has been all parties saying, we must do something. The Conservative Party is saying we're doing something, and all the other parties saying you must do more. And there has to be a kind of opposition to that. And that's what I think Teeside, and I'm very proud of it for doing this, has shown us that, there can be an opposition, and it can be outspoken, and it can challenge the consensus. And let's see what happens.
Why are the people from your part of the world, from Teeside, from Middlesbrough, do they alone seem to be the community showing appropriate scepticism? I mean, it's not just politicians. It's most of the media who are just accepting this central narrative from Boris and the gang. We've got to do all this because we have this terrible, terrible, terrible high health crisis that's going to kill millions of us. I don't accept that central narrative. I think it's a problem. I don't think it's that bad comparatively. Very few people are dying. Hospitals are still empty. And the people at Teesside seem to have worked that out. But around the country, most people are going, but I don't want to die. Boris has got to do this to save us. Why is it that only the Middlesbrough and Teesside folk seem to have worked out there's a fatal flaw in the government's argument?
Because more than any other people, perhaps in England, and also including Scotland and to a degree Wales, they've been left behind and have no trust whatsoever in Westminster. Absolutely none.
Interesting.
And so when you had the Brexit debate, Middlesbrough, there was a ward in Middlesbrough called Thorntree, the highest Leave vote in the country. Hartlepool, the highest Leave constituency in the country. These things are connected. The people of Teesside have had enough of the way in which Westminster steamrollers over them. And that's why I think when stuff like this comes up, they have no time for it whatsoever.
And Andy Preston talked of jobs. I'm not an expert on that part of the world, but I read, and it is not a place where jobs flourish. There aren't millions available. I'm sure many jobs have already gone. Many more will go up in that already employment-deprived world. He is standing up for them, isn't he? If we carry on locking down like this, if Boris says we're going to carry on, or Matt Hancock says we're going to carry on until we get the vaccine, which will be at least a year if we're lucky, that is going to devastate Middlesbrough and Teesside, isn't it?
Yes, it is, though we're used to devastation up here. frankly, Karen.
It's a way of life.
We haven't recovered from the recession of the late 1970s, early 80s. And I don't think, even though it is hugely damaging to especially the hospitality industry in Teesside, which I have to confide to you, Kevin, does a really, really good job, the hospitality industry up here. we do like a drink.
Yes.
So it does really well. But I don't think it's that. I think the primary thing is about this absolute disrespect for what London tells us. And it was the same during Brexit, and that led on to the election in which the Conservatives swept away Labour. They have no time for Labour either. It is an absolute disillusion with Westminster. And in the end, mate, this is something which is corrosive for our democracy, because more and more people, particularly within the working class and particularly in the North, just do not believe that Westminster represents what they stand for or what they want.
And it's interesting that you say that they no longer trust anything that comes out of Westminster. And I think in the case of Boris's coronavirus rhetoric, they're exactly right not to trust it. What do you think our way out of this crisis is, if at all? I mean, I asked you once before, what's the end game? Well, we now, according to Matt Hancock, the end game is the vaccine. There are two problems with that. That means at least another year of this. We cannot stand that. We will not be able to take that for another year. I think there'll be insurrection around the country. And the other thing is, Rod, that people never factor in, it's a pretty safe bet that about 20% of this country will not take the vaccine. So the idea that it is the cure-all, the solution that will end COVID once and for all, this obsession of this government, zero COVID, not really achievable. It's not going to be achieved by the vaccine.
I think that's probably right. I think there will always be and always have been free riders who will not take the vaccine because they think that everyone else is taking the vaccine and then they'll be okay. What I think will happen in the end is that there will be more Middlesbroughs. I think people will wake up. It won't just be Teeside, but it will spread. And I think it's already beginning to spread a little bit, that the way in which this is being handled isn't the right way. And I think the answer to it, which was your first question, is to franchise it back to the people, to ask the people to behave with responsibility and common sense. And for me, and for people over my age, that means being a bit careful about where you go. It means limiting the amount of times you go out. That's all it means. For people who are 20 to 30, it doesn't mean any of that. Carry on your lives is what it means.